dude, if you just put a little bit of work in, you could be an incredible player, you know? And then I've seen the opposite. I've seen guys that pretty slow, doesn't have the best lateral quickness, can't dunk, but they're great ball handlers, great basketball IQ, can pass, can shoot, and those guys go far. There may be a time where you have to do both, right? I had to do it for a while where I had to do both. And then eventually when it gets to a point where you can take the leap and run your own business. And
all right, guys, so I have a really special guest today. I'm excited for you to hear his story and about his love for basketball and how he shared that with local basketball players here in the Ocala and Marion County area. So again, I'm excited for you to hear what he does, how he does it, and why he started it. So let's dive in. All right, Tim, so how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's my pleasure. I'm glad. Thank you for agreeing to be here and to let me interview you, because not everybody wants to do that. Some people are camera shy.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Tell us a little bit about what you do, and then I'll ask some more questions about why you started doing it, but tell us what you do.
I do private, individual, and group training sessions in the Ocala and pretty much all Central Florida area for youth basketball. And it's been great. I love doing it, shares my passion for the game. But the most important reason why I do it is to be able to teach values like work ethic and discipline and consistency and performance to young athletes, men and women, to when, as they grow older, they can apply those values to whatever they want to do. If it's playing ball, you know, into the college and pro level, great. But even if they don't reach those levels, they can take it and learn, you know, from the trainings that I've taught and then apply it to business or whatever career they want to pursue, and it helps them be successful. So that's the main reason I do it. And then the secondary reason is, personally, I would love to help contribute to the basketball culture in this area and keep trying to improve it as we go forward.
All right, that's super awesome. So I know that you played basketball in high school, and then you also played like professionally. Is that correct? Or to like some degree in Lebanon, right?
Yes, so I played high school ball here in Ocala at Trinity Catholic, and then after I graduated, I went and played college basketball at St. Thomas University down in Miami. Played there for all 4 years, and after the 4 years of playing there, I got the opportunity to play pro ball overseas, and am still kind of in the mix for that. There may be an opportunity to go back and keep playing with all the craziness that has gone on in the last few years. I have not been there. I've come back home and continue to establish the training business as of right now.
Okay, that's awesome. I know. Give me 1 second here. Making a little note. I don't forget to ask you that. So I know. So like, why? When did you really start coaching? Because I know we just kind of had that a little bit of conversation. So were you like helping coach when you were in high school too, or like slightly after, or how did that work?
So it's a multi-layered answer, and I'll tell you why. Because I've been playing baseball, football, and basketball my whole life. I mean, I started playing baseball when I was 3 years old down in South Florida. And by the time I moved to Ocala and was in middle school age, the travel baseball team I played on, shout out to the Central Florida Junior Patriots and Coach Dan Trueluck, we used to have younger kids come. I mean, we were 12, 13, 14, that age, and we'd have kids younger than that come to our practices every once in a while. So I had to actually coach kids when I was still a kid. So it goes all the way back to then, honestly. Now, as far as doing the Tim Sauter training, what I've been doing, I started that my junior year of college. So we're going back 7 years ago. I was down in Miami for college, but in the summers, I'd come back to Ocala and I would see a lot of kids playing at the parks, the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, you know, you name it. And I'm like, man, it would be so cool to teach what I've learned because I had grown so much as a player myself playing college ball. You know, I can teach a little bit more of the intricacies of the game now. And I would love to see younger kids in Ocala learn and do it at a younger age instead of we have and a lot of coaches in the area will agree with me. We've had kids that they don't really do um, certain fundamentals at the elementary middle school age. So then they'll get to high school and they're a little bit behind compared to the higher level players throughout the state and the country. So my whole goal is how can I get all these kids that love the game, that want to be really good players, how can I get them started at a younger age so that way by the time they reach high school, they're kind of ready to go?
I feel like Ocala is really going through some like growing pains right now, especially like in the school systems and across the board. I mean, I'm sure traffic sometimes even is a pain. It's a lot sometimes. And I feel like like I said, we're going through like some growing pains. So I'm excited to see that you're like a part of helping influence like our sports divisions. I think Ocala's always been okay on the football end. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like we've always done pretty good with that. I don't know about baseball, but I feel like with basketball, I personally like basketball. Like if I'm gonna watch a sport, probably gonna watch basketball. My mom played in high school. It was like her thing. My mom was super big into sports. She kind of like similar to you. She played like every sport that she could play. And I played when I was in middle school. I was not really the best player. I'm a little too short for that, but I still love playing it. It's like one of the sports that I enjoy playing and watching. But I'm excited to hear that Ocala, is having people that are having a positive influence like yourself, and I'm sure many others that are, like the coaches that you're talking with, and hopefully you guys are working together. I'm sure you are to help, improve those programs because I think Ocala has a lot to offer. I don't know how you feel about that when it comes to like growth wise, and I guess that kind of leads me into like, what do you think of Ocala growth wise? Things changing? You think good, bad? Like, what is it on from your end, especially like in the sports realm?
Oh yeah, I mean, you mentioned the other sports. So yeah, football, we've had a ton of guys, some friends of mine, guys I went to high school with, that played ball with, and even before me and now even after me, guys are going all over the place doing a lot of big things in football. Baseball, same thing. I also played baseball. There's a lot of guys that have done well from here. And then don't skip volleyball. We've had a lot of girls that have gone on to Division 1 schools and even currently right now are playing at big time programs in
Awesome.
volleyball. So shout out to those girls as well. Now, basketball, it's interesting. We've had guys in the past. I mean, you go like to Vanguard and Lake Weir back in the 70s and 80s. They had some big time players back then, even throughout the 90s and early 2000s. And there were guys that gone on and did some big things even before I moved here. Um, and then there was a little bit of a gap where basketball kind of fell off a little bit. And then I think it kind of picked back up in the 2010s. There were a lot of good players, guys that went on and played college ball. It's you just seen with basketball in Ocala, if you kind of follow the history, there's been some really good moments, and then it's almost like a roller coaster where I my goal is to work with people in the area to let's create a strong culture of basketball fundamentals at the youth level. So then by the time, again, like I said earlier, you get to high school, it makes a big difference. Now, as far as the growth of the area, I think there's huge opportunity, especially with basketball, because there's that opportunity to make it better and improve it like the other sports. And now with the influx of people that are coming into Ocala and Marion County, it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And there's opportunities for more facilities. We see the swimming facility that's built out near Westport. There's World Equestrian Center that is now offering sports, and they may even plan on growing sports even more. So we'll see what happens with this area, but I'm very excited and I'm very happy to have established, the training. I also coach a travel team. So I think the future is very bright, and I think that the sports here are going to grow even more.
I agree. I think I know. I'm glad you mentioned fast because with fast, I definitely didn't even think about that. That is true that they have that. And then I know at the World Equestrian Center, don't they have basketball courts that they built there?
Not yet.
Oh, they're going
Not
to.
yet. We shall see.
Okay, we
We
shall see.
shall see.
Because I know that was a plan at some point with that I know I thought that was in talks. I thought they had already built it. That's why I said that. So that's the plan though.
So they have hosted volleyball tournaments, and
Okay.
they do have turf in one of the field houses there for soccer. So they have that already. But again, we'll see what goes on in the future. But there could be some basketball and maybe some other things coming. So
Okay, yeah, that's exciting. I think Ocala, if you're a small business person looking to come, like put roots in somewhere and like are willing and able to give some time to growth, like I think the potential is quite large just because we are in this stage of kind of moving up in the world. We're not slow Cala anymore. When I moved here 7 years ago, I might be almost 8 now. It was still pretty quiet here. There wasn't a whole lot to do. Nothing like the World Equestrian Center sure wasn't there. That wasn't even really talked about at the time. So, to see even in that short amount of time how much growth we'll have, I'm intrigued to see what the next 10 years will look like. And I can tell you, I have so many people looking to move here, like at the beginning of next year, and I just don't. I really thought it would stop and like come to some type of ease, but it's just not. And so I'm happy to hear that you have some positivity because a lot of Ocalians are not super thrilled about it.
yeah, I understand, some on that side as well too, because Ocala's been a beautiful place to live for so long. I mean, you think about even the Silver Springs area, people were coming here in the 40s and 50s, and even I think before that to shoot videos, and because of the nature is so beautiful, the farms are so beautiful. So I think a lot of the old school Ocala folks are like, man, we want to keep it that way. We don't want too many people. So I understand that side for sure. But I think if you do it right, Marion County still has so much land to offer that if we're able, you know, as a whole, as a community, like we put the neighborhoods in the right places and we grow the community in the proper way, I still think that it can be done correctly to where we still preserve, our farms and, Silver Springs and places like that to where we still have the beauty that everyone loves, but also a little bit of growth and influx to improve the area too.
That's something I think people forget too, that Marion County is the second largest county in the state of Florida. So I mean, to get from one end to the other is like 2 hours. When I ask somebody like, "What are you like? Where do you want to be in Marion County?" They're like, "Well, I mean, does it really matter?" And I'm like, "It actually does really matter where you want to be. Like, where are you working? What are you planning on doing? Like, I mean, if you're on one end, you're closer to Crystal River, so maybe saltwater fishing is your thing, or like if you're on this end, like maybe going to the beach and freshwater fishing is your thing. So like it is really big, and we still have so much land to build on that I know people don't view it that way because it's all like in these little pockets like Silver Spring Shores and Marion Oaks and Liberty Triangle and all of that. But I mean, we have a lot more room to grow. I mean, even Marion Oaks is not even completely all the way built out. Not even close. So I do think that's kind of funny. So I did want to ask. I'm kind of back up a little bit. I was as this morning as I was kind of like going through some things with basketball. I know with the Olympics this year, with our team, like we barely pulled it out, and we did, but it was really close, and that's very unusual. So I know before, like other countries, basketball was like not it. Like we always dominated. Like basketball was the U.S. sport. That's what we did, and so. Since you played in Lebanon, and I looked on their stuff, and I feel like it's like in a growth state. I was curious what your perspective was on like international basketball and what you think like culturally how it's growing and stuff like that because you have firsthand experience with that.
Well, that's a great question, and you made some great points about international play. Um, I've actually had this conversation a lot recently with some of my guys that are going into college and some that are currently in college because they have the aspirations to play overseas and just watching the NBA, there's so many more foreign guys in the NBA now that are really good players and like, you know, Jokic and Luka Doncic and you name it. There's a lot of guys, Victor Wembanyama. I mean, these guys are coming from other places. My theory on the whole thing is that I think back when we had the Dream Team in '92, it grew the game so much. And I think that the rest of the world, especially Europe, but everywhere Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and East Asia, everywhere, even South America, the Caribbean, they saw that Dream Team. And I think that the rest of the world, since the '90s, started working very hard on the fundamentals that they saw being played in the NBA at the time, where it was mostly American players. Now, since that time until now, you fast forward 30 plus years later, I think the rest of the world, at least fundamentally and basketball wise, has caught up. Now, it's funny because this is a huge debate. Like, well, we're still America. We still have the best players. That I agree. I still think that at the end of the day, we still have the best players, best coaches, best culture, all that kind of stuff. However, playing over there, the one thing I would love to see different here in the States is what I like that they do overseas. Every pro team, everyone I've encountered and everyone I've seen and heard, and other players that I've known that have played, they all have an academy down to the youth level. So they have kids down at 8, 9, 10, 11, all the way up to 16, 17 years old. So they're teaching the fundamentals. They're teaching their system, the offense, the defense, how to play the right way, when to pass, when to look to score, all those details. So by the time these kids are 14 and 15, they're almost mini pros. And some of them play pro, like Luka Doncic. He was playing pro at 15, 16 years old. So then by the time he's 19, 20, coming to the NBA, he's way ahead of the game. Whereas I would love to see more of that. And actually, that was a huge inspiration of why I do Tim Sada training, because I take all of the knowledge, experience, and use that to teach the intricacies of the game that I've learned from playing all over the country in college and then all over the world overseas. I've picked up so many things from different coaches, different players, that I implemented myself as a player and now implement as a coach. So it's a great question that you bring, because that's my theory on the whole thing. I think the rest of the world fundamentally is starting to catch up, and you see it, right? Because even the men's team almost lost, right? And the women's, it was very close. So now I still think, again, we have the best players and we have the best coaches and all that, but I think that we need to evaluate our youth programs across the country. And the NBA, I know they do youth things, but I would like to see more of an effort to make more academies to teach kids how to grow up as they get older. And then the last thing I'm going to say, because you mentioned Caitlin Clark, And then you said something. I don't. You said a little bit in between. Then you said unusual. I think that's what you have to bring back and put them together because she's very unusual. I mean, she is incredible. I mean, just watching her in college was so much fun, and then now she's in the WNBA as a rookie, tearing it up already. I mean, she is just
Wear him out.
yeah, she is unreal, and she's so much fun to watch. But what I like about her is, there's always the back and forth and the competitive piece, and a lot of people are going at her because she's a rookie and she's brought the popularity and the money to the sport, and that's great. But what I like is how she's handling herself. She hasn't really, at least from what I've seen, one time let that get to her. She just keeps playing. And now, look, her team's doing much better. In the beginning, they were struggling. Now that the Fever, they're starting to win little by little, and she seems very unselfish. Yes, she puts up the stats, she puts up the numbers. She loves to pass the ball and keeps her team involved, and we'll see how it goes. See how the rest of the season.
Has brought. I mean, everybody was really complaining that like back before like women's sports in general, like they just don't bring the money. But like Caitlin Clark I think is going to bring the money. I mean, people love her. She's bringing a new edge to basketball. I feel like, for women's basketball in particular, and like really pushing women to meet that high standard and not just like passing along. Like either you're going to get it together and you're going to meet those levels and like be performing at the highest level that you can and take it as serious as the men do, or like you're just not going to do that well. Like I mean, I hate to be like that, but I mean, women's basketball in particular, other women's sports, I don't like. Soccer's pretty entertaining. I can tell you, women rugby, like they're wicked to me. They're way more wicked than the men by far. Like they are ruthless.
I think soccer too, though.
Yes, I agree.
Because women's soccer is
more women that I grew up with that played like tournaments and like they played a lot, like a lot, and they had more injuries than any of the guys that I knew that played soccer.
well, for whatever reason, men's soccer. And listen, as a basketball player, I know people call us out too, but the flopping is ridiculous. I mean, they're always looking for some kind of advantage, which some of it is skill and trying to take advantage of the game. I understand, but at some point it's just like, all right, get up and play. Whereas the women, I'm like, I don't really see it. They just kind of beat the heck out of each other, so it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, no, the same is just wicked. My wife actually played rugby in college, so she talks about it and stuff, and she talked about how ruthless the women were. Like my wife's 4'9", and she was playing against a girl who was like, I think the girl was like 6 foot or something, and she literally picked Darielle up and like put her to the ground. And she goes, yeah, I like it was. She goes, it was really intense, and like they almost got like her team almost got in a fight with that girl. It was like a whole thing, and I'm like, that's the intensity that I feel like women's rugby has, and other women's sports do. But I feel like basketball, I don't know why, but a lot of times it just was never that entertaining. And even sometimes men's basketball isn't that entertaining if the team doesn't have it together, because what makes it fun is the ball going back and forth. And if it's just like a missed shot after missed shot, it kind of gets old. It gets old. So I did want to ask and bring it a little bit back to you and what you do. So how has it been so far with, it sounds like it's been going pretty good with owning a business here in Marion County. I know we kind of touched on it, but I didn't ask that specific question.
Oh, it's been great. I love it. You know, just like any industry, any business, word of mouth is key. That's the number one thing, and that's been great. And I think it's helped though that I started it back in college 7 years ago, because I've started training a lot of the kids that I train now back when they were younger, and they've just continued to grow along with the training, and that's been great. And for the kids that have had great experiences and their parents have seen that, they've done it for me as far as spreading the word around. And again, word of mouth is the best, so I've really enjoyed that part of it.
No, I think in Marion County, word of mouth is still a big thing. I did interviewed somebody else, and I talked about that, and I don't know if people always realize that Marion County is still like small town, because they still have like that main network of people, and if you get into those main network of people and you find your place in them, because you may not get along with all of them, it will help you in the long run, just because it is still so tight knit. It is changing, things are getting shooken up, and it's definitely not the same. But it's gonna be a while before that no longer is the case. So I'm happy to hear that you also had some great experiences. I know you've been here for a long time, so that kind of helps too a little bit.
Yeah, it does. So my family, we moved from South Florida
Okay.
to Ocala back in 2006. So I've been in the area for a good amount of time. Now, for me personally, I've been all over the place because after high school, like I said, I went back to Miami, played college ball for a few years, then overseas, then back. So kind of all over the place. But yeah, as far as coming to Ocala, yeah, we've been in the area for a good while.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you like Ocala still?
Oh yeah, that's why I came back here.
Okay.
I was playing, and then once COVID shut everything down, I had to come back, and I didn't have to come back to Ocala. Could have gone anywhere really, but
Were you in Lebanon when that happened, or no?
right before that, yeah. And so
Okay.
then I came back and I was like, uh, let's I'm gonna stay in Ocala for the meantime. And again, I was already again throughout those summers, I was already doing the basketball training. So I'm like, man, I can do that full time,
Were you
and
doing it here, or were you doing it there?
I was doing it here.
Okay.
In college I was in Miami, but in the summers when we're off, I'd
Gotcha.
come back to Ocala in those summers. That's why I said I'm all over the place, back and forth. Um, but it was fun and I loved doing it. I had kids here that were asking me like, when am I coming back? When am I coming back? So when there was, COVID and everyone shut down everywhere, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna work some jobs and I'm gonna do that on the side as well. So I was working two jobs and also doing the basketball training. Now, um, this may lead into another question, but I think you were gonna ask me about young entrepreneurs and advice, but we're already kind of there, so I wanted to hit on that. During that time, I was working two jobs and I was doing basketball training. So literally all day, every day, worked for about 8 or 9 months straight, every day, nonstop. But the beautiful part was that helped continue the word of mouth, continue the basketball training, and make some money, save it aside to then eventually, a couple of years later, can now run my own business, right? So that was a huge opportunity for me and a huge moment, and took something that was negative and try to turn it to a positive because it was something that I worked my entire life for to become a pro, and then it all went away, and it was out of my control. It was just crazy stuff going on. But instead of sitting around and moping about it or crying about it, it was like, you know what? I have this opportunity placed before me to give back and teach the youth to give them more opportunities. So that's what I need to do, and that's why I do what I do. Um, but the advice to a young entrepreneur is whatever industry you want to get into, get as much experience as possible. And while you're getting that experience, save money away, put it away, put it away, put it away. Don't, waste it on things that don't matter, right? And then if you're passionate about it, invest into yourself, invest into your business. And there may be a time where you have to do both, right? I had to do it for a while where I had to do both. And then eventually when it gets to a point where you can take the leap and run your own business. And to me, there's nothing better than that. It's great. And not only is that great for the individual, but it's great for the community, and that kind of ties everything back together of the growth of Ocala, plus advice for the young entrepreneurs.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that that is super important. And I will say that I am a second degree black belt in Taekwondo. I don't talk about that very often, but I am.
Oh,
And
I might need to get out of here. I might get whooped.
I did that for a long time. It was a big part of my life, and I'm looking to get back into it. So hopefully, I've been training my nephew, and so I'm hoping to get back. Hopefully next year, I'm hoping to put like some type of school together to some point. I just miss it. I miss teaching the kids. I coached for 2 years. I did mostly. I personally am really great at forms when it comes to competitions, but I can teach sparring better. I'm like really good at teaching those fundamentals, and I kind of wanted to touch on that. It is really important that you know fundamentals. Like I don't care how good you think you can spar, how good you think you can play the game, but if you don't know how to pass well, dribble well, move your feet well, all of those, like, and that all like is the boring part of the sport, of any sport really. I struggled with that when I taught. I only had one class with them, and so I did a lot of fundamentals because their fundamentals were very bad and they were getting negative scores at these competitions, and I'm like, because your fundamentals are terrible. And it goes back to like sometimes you do the boring thing. Same thing with entrepreneurs. So like you're talking about like having to do those things that are hard and having to do multiple things at once just to get the job done, so that way you can have the end goal. And I really think, I don't matter what you're doing, sometimes you do have to do the things that are boring, mundane, and just kind of don't make a whole lot of sense until all the pieces are aligned, and then you're kind of set to move forward and to be successful.
Yeah, no doubt. And even at that point, it's still a risk, and it's still not easy, and you're still going to, you know, have to have not only the responsibilities you already had, but now it takes it even further because you're running your own show. You don't have anybody holding you accountable. You have to do it to yourself. So it's not like, oh, it just gets real easy. It doesn't. You still have to work really hard. You still have to, again, make sure every experience that a client has with you is fantastic because that's how the word of mouth grows. So it's a lot of hard work, and you have to really be passionate about it and really love it. But back to your taekwondo, I think you should get back into it whenever
Yeah,
you
no,
can.
I'm hoping to.
Well, in a combat sport, I mean that's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, too. I'm excited to do that. It's like a goal that I made for myself, Just because I like I said, I did coaching and my students always did really well. I always used to have all of my students made their opponents cry. So I was kind of proud of that. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I kind of.
No, I love it. I mean, and you're harping on fundamentals, and that's a big thing for me because
Yeah.
every single individual athlete has their ceiling of athleticism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, you can train and get faster and jump higher and get stronger for sure. You definitely can work on those things and increase your athleticism, but everybody has a different ceiling for that. But if you work on the fundamental, like in basketball, ball handling, footwork, shooting, defensive technique, passing, you work on those things and you increase all of those, you could be a much better player, even if your athletic ceiling isn't as high as somebody else. And I've seen it. I've seen it all over the place, and everything's case by case. I've seen guys that were tremendous athletes, 360 dunks, windmills, could do it all. I mean, their heads above the rim when they jump, but they could barely dribble. And I'm like, dude, if you just put a little bit of work in, you could be an incredible player. And then I've seen the opposite. I've seen guys that pretty slow, you know, doesn't have the best lateral quickness, can't dunk, but they're great ball handlers, great basketball IQ, can pass, can shoot, and those guys go far, and they end up just because yeah, they're not the fastest, not the strongest, but they know the game and they can play. So the fundamentals are definitely huge. Now, when it gets real scary is when you take someone that is athletic and then they do the fundament. That's when you get those superstar players, right?
Yeah,
So
no, 100%. Yeah, no, 100%. You definitely have to have both, and I think the same thing applies to business too as well. Like if you have to have those fundamentals, you gotta do the stuff you don't want to do, and the stuff even if you're really naturally good at it. And when you have the combo, you figure out. I think the key is figuring out what you're good at and running with it. I think it's super important. The one thing I wanted to ask before we round this up, because I know we kind of hit on it before when we talked before setting up this meeting, is I know you have some big plans planned. I don't know if you want to share anything, but I wanted to ask what your next 5 to 10 year goal is.
yeah, within the next 5 to 10 year goal, mine is to have a facility of my own where we can do all types of indoor sports and training. Obviously, basketball would be at the forefront, but I'm open to doing joint ventures, especially with like volleyball or whatever indoor soccer, and would love to have something in the next 5 to 10 years. So that way, we maximize again the training and the growth for the athletes in this area. So that's the big plan.
That's awesome because I know that you right now you have to go to what people's houses or to the schools.
So it's all over. So I use my own house. I have weights in the garage, and then we have the hoop and a pretty big driveway, so I can do that. And then there are a few schools that allow me to train there, and so we work at the schools. And then yeah, there are some you know families that hey, I have a hoop in the backyard. We have room. We got some weights here. Will you come do it at that? And sure. So I'll do it anywhere. I always joke, and some of my athletes say it now, which is pretty funny because they heard it from me. But I always say like there's no excuses like especially for working out, right? When you're a young athlete, I always am about the daily routine of you got to run, do push-ups, sit-ups, and not everybody has access to weights or maybe a hoop or something. But I always say if there's a ground, then you can work out, right? You can do push-ups, you can do sit-ups, you could if there's a and God forbid nothing happens to our planet, but right now there's a ground everywhere. So that's my little saying I like to say, and it may be like corny, but it's I really mean that. If you have ground, you can work out. So we'll do it anywhere basically.
I think that's a great message. Now, I'll put all your information on here, but you're on like all social media, right?
You can find me at all social medias. The biggest one is the Instagram account at Tim Sada Training. I did just most recently make a website as well, timsadatraining.com. People can look up, some testimonials of kids I've already worked with that are local to the area, and then also there's, a little bit more about me if they wanted to research background stuff like that.
On the Facebook group that are asking about sports coming up in Ocala because they're coming from different places, and so what you're doing is great. I think you're like really hitting the nail on the head on what people are looking for and wanting for their kids.
Well, thank you so much. I also want to lastly say that yes, I do the private lessons, which I do individual and small groups, but also this past year I did the first camp that I've ever run as well over the summer. And now we're doing what I call a group skills session, where it's a little bit bigger group, like a camp, but it's more of like a mini camp. It's just a 1 day deal. And our next one's coming up October 12th. So I just want to let people know that. And I plan on doing it, at least monthly, going forward. Again, another thing to keep kids working out and learning and to do it periodically, because that way they have things to build on. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. And I would like to, keep my eyes on that and help them, maximize their strengths and then improve their weaknesses as well. So I just want to put that out there too.
No, awesome. Where are you doing that?
That has been taking place at Redeemer Christian. That's where I've been doing the mini camps. Yeah.
Okay. And they can see it through you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Tim, and I think the interview went really great. Again, my pleasure, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and check back next week. Thanks so much.
Well, awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Gabby.